Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new podcast, Shades of Black. I am your co host, Neralan, the founder of Consciously Black, a community platform where I gather Black individuals in Canada to discuss their Black experiences and revive Black pride.
And I'm Miriam, a registered psychotherapist and founder of Thoughtful Therapist, a mental health platform aimed to empower marginalized communities. And together we have created Shades of Black, a bi-weekly podcast emerging from both our studies where we shed light on the different experiences encountered within our Black communities and the mental health aspects that exist within those experiences.
Join our new community space where we discuss our challenges, our successes, our joy, our pain, and our Blackness. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other platforms to tune into our bi-weekly episodes. We cannot wait to converse with you.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Shades of Black. I am your co-host Neralan, and I'm with
Miriam, and today we have a special episode. As you can see, we are not in our usual setting. We are in Halifax, and the reason for that is there's a 3-day convention happening at the Halifax Convention Center, and it's called the National Black Canadian Summit, and it's founded by the Michael Jean Foundation, and essentially it's just a convention full of people of color, Black people, where we get to speak about our experiences regarding racism, oppression, systemic racism, and a way forward. And so for today's episode, we wanted to highlight the history of Africville.
Yeah.
And we won't dive too much into it because we don't have our own personal knowledge, but we are here today with Eddy Carvery I and Eddy Carvery III. And they'll be able to introduce themselves in a few and tell us more about Africville and the history that exists within that and how has supported the Black community in the past and how their plans for the future. So we can just get started.
My name is Edward Leo Carvery. I was born in a place called Africville, Nova Scotia, on the edge of Halifax. That was back in '46. The community I was born into was primarily a Black community. We had a few white people, families, and Native people, but prominently we were a Black community. The Africville that I knew, that I remember growing up in, was a beautiful place to be. We had a church, we had our own school, we had 3 or 4 stores, we had a dance hall. So we were pretty well adjusted to our community, and we all just simply loved it. People would come from all over to attend our church services. It was so spiritual, and it was a beautiful place to be. But the way it goes, what they had done with us, they pushed us back to the shore. And what I'm saying when I say push us back to the shore, at one time, everything north of Yonge Street used to be Africville. They pushed us back to the shore. Where you see a place called Windsor Park and Willow Park, they took that from Africville for a war surplus. That was my uncle's farms. They pushed us back to the shore. Where Fort Needham is and this other community, the Hydrostone, they were Black farms. They were a part of Africville. They pushed us back to the shore. Back there when 1917 they had the Halifax explosion, it wasn't an accident. That happened in Africville for a specific reason. They wanted something, and we had it. It was land. And so they created an explosion toward the heart of Halifax. As a result, we lost our farms. They turned around Fort Needham, became another thing. They put Richmond School in there, and the Brown Farm, that was turned into another community for white people. And we got pushed back to the shore. Then they had decided that they would put a bridge through, and which they did. It took our community, but they just bulldozed our homes over. What they did was kind of sad because they bribed people, they bullied other people, and they simply just bulldozed over some of the homes. That's was our awakening. This is the reality we had to face. We had a home one day, and in the 50s they decided to give us to place a dump right in the heart of our community. And I come to find out it was a toxic waste dump. Not only that, everything that came from the hospitals, SPCA, dead carcasses of animals was slung on the dump. And it became a hazard in our community, and it got overwhelming because of the rodents and the rats that dump attracted. And as a result, they poisoned the dump. They poisoned the whole dump. And as a result, right today, the community of Africville, all the people that's left, we're dying of cancer. And the people before me died of cancer. They did something when they put down the poison on the dump, and it affected our whole community. But there's no resolve. There's no public inquiry. They're allowed to do that and get away with it. What they did to us in our community was barbaric. It was cruel. It was mean. How could they get away with it? In the name of racism, that's how they got away with it. And they did it everybody was quite happy to see our homes being bulldozed over, to see our lifestyle just being destroyed. Everyone was quite happy when they destroyed and took the heart of Halifax out. Africville, that was my home. I was brought up there. I was born there. I wasn't born in the city. I wasn't born on the dump. These things, that's what the city done in order to obtain my community. We've got the richest piece of property in Halifax. The container fair, they're paying Halifax something like $1 billion a year to be in Africville. We get nothing. The Bridge Commission, they've been in Africville since the 60s. They've made more than double their money. We have received nothing. They didn't even give us the satisfaction to call the bridge the Africville Bridge, which was built in Africville on Cecil Dixon land. They called it Murray McKay Bridge, a name nobody knows about. Another slap in the face as they took our community all these years later. There's still not even a sidewalk there. They've got a park there, and the reason why the park is there was to drive me out of Africville, but I wouldn't go. I just simply refused to go. The whole 9 yards. It was never them accepting what they did and harmonizing and building a community. It was about being destructive, being hateful, being cruel, being mean, and changing the face of history by doing this to a community that, like I said, was here before Halifax. We served Halifax. It was my ancestors that built Citadel Hill, the Maroons. It was my ancestors that they took Halifax from, the First Nations people. My mother's an indigenous person. They did that to us, and we got poverty. We got our communities taken from us, and there's no resolve. There's only one thing to do: put our community back in place, where our children's children will have a future, where we all can be on the same page as Canadians. Right now, it doesn't work that way. Right now, everyone is saying, oh, we're not racist, but oh yeah, we are racist. We're worse than racist because we're liars. And as long as we're permitted to do stuff like this to minorities, to the very backbone of this culture and this society, we're no better than the worst races. That's why it's up to everybody to stand up. Stand up and turn this world around and put it right back on its axis where it belongs. Because a group of people made a decision 60, 70 years ago to take a community, even though they were Caucasian, even though they were racist, what they did was wrong. Now today, everybody is saying, yeah, that was wrong. Well, I got a suggestion too. Put it back.
Yeah.
Give us back our life. We deserve that much. Our ancestors, that's what they worked for. That's why we had Africville. Right up to the 70s, when they decided that they would break every law and just do exactly what they wanted to do all the time. And the result is us people of Africville, us proud people, have been demoted to welfare recipients, to people without a future, without a community, without a home. Somebody did that to us. And it's time that they stood up and be accountable for what they did. I suggest to everybody in the sound of my voice, check it out. Get in touch with the person responsible, and please inform them that what they did was wrong, is not forgotten, and it's not forgiven. Put it back so we can all grow as Canadians, and we can enjoy the wealth of this country. This racism got to stop. It started in Africville. It should stop in Africville. We all should be on the same page by now.
That's
So
it.
I have a question then. I guess the flow switched up a bit,
But
but
just
Maybe
the introduction.
yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
Well, I'll do my quick
We'll
introduction.
edit it.
I should have went first because how do I live up to something like that, right? But my name's Eddy Carvery III. I'm the grandson of the man you just heard spoke, who is the longest active civil rights protester in North American history. Now, I think when you hear all the explanation that he just did, the descendants of Africville who were living through that time, they all tie that associated pain, suffering, also the joy of the community with their own identity. So when you ask them who they are, you often get that reference back to everything that was not only shown to them as a blessing within their community, but they still have that pain attached to them, and that's shaped them into who they are today, right? So that was a long answer, but it was a fulfillment one. Like that's what it is. That's who he is. He is the joy. He is the pain. He is the yesterday and the tomorrow, right? Like that's what's so meaningful about Africville. Now for myself, I'm a podcast host too. We just did a podcast, Africville Forever. I'm a consultant, and I'm a partner in a Web3 community. I just entered that space, so that's pretty exciting.
Okay.
And you're a painter.
Yeah, a painter.
You paint. That's nice. So how do you both identify yourselves?
Africvillians.
That's it.
Africvillians.
That's how. Yeah.
Okay, Africvillians. Interesting.
Oh, never heard of
That's
it.
Yeah.
what we are, Africvillian.
What does that encompass? Africvillians.
Well, African community.
Okay.
That's what we started out to be, and then we got the name Africville, but that was never the real name for Africville.
What was the real name?
Gee, bunny, I can't remember it now.
There was not more imposed on them. It was always to do with either the African community. There was never a direct name.
The proper name of Africville was Seaview. Seaview. But it was easier to say Africville, African village, and it's stuck.
Okay.
And through the years, we were Africville, known as a bunch of Africans that had a community in Halifax.
So do you guys identify as African Canadians, or do you only
The tricky part about it, even though the name was Africville, we never associated ourselves as African.
Okay.
We always were Canadian first, right?
Okay.
African descendants.
Yeah.
But that's when they were busy taking our identity and making us feel ashamed of who we were, and all them tricks. You know, like they tell you, don't stand too close to me, you smell funny, and all them dirty tricks. I had a school teacher. I went to school. I started school in Africville. I did great. I was in grade primary, grade 1. Then they decided that they couldn't afford to give us school teachers, and so they decided it would be better to tear our school down than to give us school teachers. That's what they did, and when they did that, they decided they would integrate us into the city, and so we went to their school. I went to Margaret Park School. I was in grade 2. I graded into a grade 3 class. on my way into the grade 3 class, I had a choice of 2 teachers which class I would prefer. And I was only a kid, 8 years old. I preferred the younger teacher. She was named Miss McGilvery. She was from Newfoundland, but she was so nice. And of course, I was a kid. The other woman was an older woman, mole on her chin and hair coming out of it, and she wasn't nice. Her name was Miss Beck. No, I was serious. Her name was Miss Beck. And she gave me a choice, and I went with the other teacher. And she told me, she said, you made the wrong choice. She said, that woman, she's a substitute. I'm a teacher. And I thought I was smart because Mom told me I was smart. And I said, yeah, well, you won't get me because I'm going to grade. I graded in the grade 4 class. I'm sitting in grade 4 class. This woman comes from grade 3, comes into grade 4, grabs me by the back of my neck, and drags me back to grade 3. This is just the beginning of my humiliation. And she slams, I'm left-handed, so she slams me in the right-handed desk. And she said, you'll stay in that desk until you walk out of the school. She wasn't lying. The woman kept me in her class all them years, and every day she would tell the kids, don't go near that guy. He's contagious. He stinks. He eats off the dump. He's a liar. He's filthy. And this is what she used to tell the rest of the kids. I had to tolerate that. Every year, from grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, it wasn't no stopping. She had me, and I couldn't get out of her class, and no one could realize or see what this woman, this white woman, was doing to this little child. And she actually got away with that. And I've mentioned that to numerous people on the school board and that, and yet I've got waiting for someone to come back and say, Mr. Carvery, we're sorry that ever happened to you. That is from 8 years old till I was 16. This woman did that intentionally, and she got away with it in the public school system. So, this is just one example of what they did to us kids from Africville. The other example was they created an auxiliary class where you just simply have no opportunity to learn at all. No math, no spelling, no English, no nothing. You went to school to play and go home. They did that for a reason. They kept us illiterate because they did not want us to learn. Now, as cruel as that may seem, they've done nothing to address that concern. Their school board, the people their educators, they've yet to come up and stand beside the same people that had them residential schools. And what they did to the Native kids, what they did in Halifax to poor black kids was just as wrong. But they never took responsibility. And right today, they still have not taken responsibility. As long as in this society you're allowed to get away with doing stuff like that, then you wonder why we're steeped in racism? Why is it still continuing? Because they're permitting it. They're the ones that's creating these problems. We got to live with them. Like I said, no one's addressed this problem that I've had with the school board, teachers, or whoever, but somebody messed with my life. And when they did, they hurt me. And for 8 years of my life, I suffered. And no one is saying we were responsible. We take responsibility. But if I go and take a rock and break a window, they're putting me in jail.
No.
And that was well said. And I don't know what else I can add to that other than, when it comes to Africville, you have to realize, other than our original ancestors who were brought here before Canada was Canada, before Halifax was Halifax, they were brought here as slaves to dig the streets and the roads of Halifax and build infrastructure. But the majority of our people were always free. They earned their freedom, whether it was fighting through the American wars. We have Maroon descendants who also stood up to the British, and we came here as a free people with the promise of this land will be yours and your families forever for what you have sacrificed and done for us.
Yeah, well, if you go right back to the beginning of the day, it was the Jamaican government that paid to have the Maroons come up here to Canada to build that fort in the first place. We never came up as slaves. Jamaica couldn't deal with us because we were hostile. And when they brought us over to Africa, the Jamaicans wanted to get rid of the Maroons, so they sent us up to Nova Scotia. We were hostile. We were angry. But that was a part of our heritage, our history. That's how we got here. But Canada had nothing to do with it. It was the Jamaican government that paid the way to have the people come up here to build to the hill and that. Somehow through time, they forgot their obligation to the people that they sent to Canada. And we became refugees. We were sent here to do a job. We did the job. And then we suffered all the persecutions, and no one's looked back and said, hey, these people that came here the very first, we deserve more. We deserve better. We deserve to be treated equal. That's the least we deserve. After all, we did pay the ultimate price, and it's our community. And right today tomorrow, if people don't open up their eyes and help, because we really need help in the worst kind of way, we can't do it by ourselves. It takes a community, and we need the whole community. Matter of fact, we need the whole country for to open up their eyes to racism. And if they want to start in Africville. That's where it began. That's where it's okay to be racist. Go to Africville. I don't think so. I think that's the other way around. It's time to stop being racist. Go visit Africville. Give us our pride back. Give us our community back. Give us the opportunity that we deserve to be citizens in this great country. We deserve it because we built it. We did our share. But our children's children, for some reason, because of color of their skin or because of where they're from, they're not entitled to the same benefits of everybody else because 8, 10 people made a decision in City Hall 60 years ago to do something wrong, and the society today is going to uphold them in that? Come on. Give us a break. We're a part of this community, and I think it's time that everyone opened up their eyes so we can share in the bonuses and the luxuries of living in a society such as Halifax.
So my question is, you mentioned that they were more descendant of Jamaica, most of the...
Yeah, the Maroons.
The Maroons.
Okay. But I feel that just to clarify this again, I feel like a lot of people, when they think about like black in Canada or the North America, they always think about slavery and things like that.
Yeah.
So would it be possible to just clarify that if Canada had any slave trade similar to United States?
It was the Jamaican government that made it possible for the Maroons to get to Canada. It wasn't, they didn't go down there and get us.
Okay.
We were set up to help them.
Yeah.
That's how it all began.
So the difference is that you're Jamaican or Maroon descended more so than African descendant, if I could say that.
I mean, I guess Jamaican or descendant of
Yeah.
African.
Well, yeah, of course, because it's from the Ivory Coast. They brought the Maroons over to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And the Maroons were warlike people.
Yeah.
They didn't want to listen to the government. They had their own society.
And they were self-sustaining too, right?
And that's how they dealt with the Maroons. They sent them up here to Nova Scotia. And it was good because the Jamaican government paid money and to take care of this group of workers, but we were never sent back.
Yeah.
They gave us places like East Preston,
Eagle Lake,
a bunch of rocks, no nothing, back 200 years ago. You come from a warm climate. They push you over there, no food, no nothing, and you were supposed to live. That's what they did to our ancestors, say. But we did live in places like Africville, places like Shelburne, places like black communities that weren't supposed to survive. We survived and we did well right up to after the war. And I guess with everything said and done, racism became very open, and it was okay to be racist. And they did, in which they did. And as a result of what they did, we lost our whole community. We lost the whole north end of Halifax. We lost the future for our children. We lost everything. All because there was a group of white people who were racist that sit on a council and made a bad decision. Right today, we're still paying for it. And right today, even though there's all different people on that committee, they're not saying what they did was wrong. Give them back their community. That's it. That's the bottom line. Until they do that, I'm in their face. You know, I'm not going no place. I'm in their face. And this is what it takes. All these years later, I'm sitting here repeating the same thing, but the results is becoming more and more negative to us Africville people. They're encroaching on us. Our land that went from one end to the other and now has been depleted and shrunken into a small quarter. Somebody did that intentionally. Somebody knows the difference, but yet they prefer to use these tactics to be racist, to deny us our rightful place in Canada. That's what they're doing. And as a result, I'm in the face. Like I said, my grandson, I want him to be sitting on the board when they make their decisions about the container pier and what they're doing in Africville. I think there should be somebody representing Africville on the board. And I believe my grandson's the guy for the job. The same way as the Bridge Commission, same way as CN, the same way as all them entities that they've placed in our community. We've got no one to stand up for Africville and to say, hey, this belongs to Africville, we want our piece of the pie. We're excluded. We don't even get the crumbs. We get nothing. In the meantime, like I said, the container pier, that's $1 billion a year. Halifax is making all kinds of money, and we're living on welfare. Our future has been cut short because of the greed, because of the racist policies that Halifax is dealing with, into how they deal with the minorities. We're a perfect example of the perfect storm. This is what they done. This is the reality. This is the truth. We're living in Canada. We're not supposed to be that way. We're supposed to be all in one melting pot, all for one and one for all. But when you exclude a whole community and you treat them unfairly and unjustly and give them things like a stinking rotten dump, installations like a contagious disease hospital, poison in the water they drink, that's what they did to us. This is just scraping the surface. And I think how many children was born in Africville that didn't make it? There was 3 in my immediate family because of the conditions that we had to suffer under, because the attitude of the city. What they didn't do for us, they wouldn't give us water, they wouldn't give us plumbing. We didn't have insulated homes. Half the homes wasn't insulated. We were living on the shore of the Bedford Basin. And so all these things and this and that, we want our community back. We see today oceanfront homes. We don't see a bunch of shacks on the shore. We see nice oceanfront homes. The possibility is unlimited. You see these high-rise buildings. You can stick 12 of them in Africville. Money. They're holding us back. They don't want us to accomplish anything. That's why it's like a stalemate. And that's why people ain't got no homes, and all that land that's out there is available, and nobody's living on it because of a policy that the city got and the racist attitude about the proper owners of that community. I suggest again, give it back. Give us our community back. We can build our own homes. We can have wonderful dreams just like every other Canadian. We did the work. We fought for it. That's ours. Our parents went through the wars. We did it all. We served the city with all our heart. And how they treated us was the knife in the back. They were racist. They were racist then. They're racist now until they give Africville back, I'm sorry, but I can't see myself saying that, yeah, I'm proud to be a Canadian, because right now, I'm not proud.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I'm kind of ashamed. I'm ashamed to be living in a racist society where everyone claims to be equal. Everybody claims that we're on the same page. But yet, this discrimination still exists, and it's going on. And like I said, the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer.
Mm-hmm.
And us poor minorities, we're suffering under the same brutal, fascist society, which are racist towards us because of the color of our skin.
So you talked about how Africville had its own society, it was its own community. Can you talk about more about the land, the businesses, the commerce, and how Africville was able to sustain itself throughout its time?
Yeah, we did. It's remarkable people, resilient people. And even though they did the negative things like the toxic waste dump, we worked it to our advantage, where we used to work that dump, even though it was poison. And we used to get medals, and we started recycling. Probably one of the first recycling places in Canada started in Africville. That's when they gave us the dump. We had no choice. If you come from Africville, the city of Halifax wouldn't hire you. So, they made it almost impossible. They wanted our community to that point where the stuff that they were doing in Africville was harmful to the residents, to everybody. It's still toxic out there, what they did. Like I said, it's really kind of major when you think about it. When you look at a whole community of people, then you realize that 100% death rate is cancer. And so little things like that will give you some indication that they did something very wrong in Africville, and they're not taking responsibility. I mean, we're dying, but we can't get a public inquiry.
Why don't you take us for a walk through Africville? Like, start at one end of the community.
Well,
you get to Nelson's Father's. We got a store there, and then there's a post office. Describe to us what was the functioning
it
places
was small
within
because
Africville.
What they did, they placed barriers up, like Dominion Coal Company. That began at one end of the north end of Africville. They had a coal company. They had a shipping company called Fleming's. And so that was as far as we could go south.
What about within
the other end? They had a highway board operation with the trains and that used to come and shunt and that. And so that wasn't good for the environment, but that was good for CN. And then at the top of the hill, they put a institution in there. It was called Rocky's Prison. And so we got the satisfaction of seeing a bunch of prisoners coming through our community every day. Then, of course, there's the famous Basin View Hospital. That's where they brought the contagious disease people, that they wouldn't put them in ordinary hospitals because of the diseases, but they created a hospital in Africville where they would put these people, and then they had a drainage system, a sewage system, that they flushed everything from their hospital. And it happened to come out in our pond where we learned to swim in that.
So I was just wondering, is this hospital was owned and created by the Africvillian?
Well, they placed it at the top of Africville. It was
he means the
a
city
contagious
of
disease hospital.
Okay.
And what it was where the war had just got over, right? And so it was the soldiers that was away that came back to Canada, and they wanted to isolate them because they had different diseases. So they created this place called the Basin View Hospital.
And they created in...
And the sewage, they dug a system where the sewage came down through Africville, and then it came up in our pond where we were taught how to swim. well, like our fisheries and everything, they poisoned it.
Yeah, but besides those constraints, like personally myself, I know maybe you want to share it with the listeners, like even with all that negative things surrounding the community placed upon your people, they still managed to find a way to open stores, to rework that material off the dump, to open a post office, to teach the kids at school. Like, tell us shed some light on the positive aspects.
Like I said, it was positive to go out to the dump in the morning and to catch Swiss, a meat truck, throwing the whatever on the dump, and we would be there, and we'd be salvaging, like bacon, chicken, whatever we could get, we would take it. That was a part of our destitution, what they done to us, and we worked off the dump, we lived off the dump, we ate off the dump.
So
Somebody did that to us.
I have a question, and my question is: I know you mentioned there was a farm there, that was for your uncle. So the farm was there. Was it because that people from Africville was unable to go to Halifax and purchase their food?
No, I think it was the other way around.
Okay,
Like,
so they were coming.
Africville supported Halifax.
Okay.
We had the farms in the beginning.
Okay.
We were the people that built Halifax.
Okay.
Dug out the streets, built the universities. Africville
Did
had.
the agriculture.
It was
yes.
my ancestors that did that. They were the ones. The mothers was in the bedrooms, was doing whatever the housemaids did. It was the people of Africville that did that. We were there. We were in the homes. We were a part of vital needs of the society, and we did it well.
And was the farmer was getting the proper compensation, or so let's say they had like eggs and that, and they had to bring it to Halifax with it.
Yeah, well, in the first place, it was a need.
Okay.
Halifax needed Africville. I don't know, even the laboratories, they didn't have no running water at the beginning, so someone had to clean that shit. And it was the Africville hands. Like I said, we were in the bedrooms. We were there on the streets. We kept Halifax functioning.
Okay.
It was the Africville people. And we had a great sense of pride in what we were doing. Like I said, right up the Young Street, we had farms. They took the farms. They created this, all these other streets, Canard Avenue and this and that. They went there 50 years ago, 100 years ago. They weren't there. Our farms were there. But like I said, they pushed us back to the shore. As they grew, we grew less because they took what we had from us, and they left us poverty-stricken, where we had to go to a city dump and dig like hoarders off a dump to eat.
Yeah.
Children.
How was the school system in Africa?
Well, like I said, the school system in Africa was great until they tore our school down.
So what was great about
And
it?
then they forced us to go into the school in the city.
Okay.
Urban renewal.
What was school like though?
Yeah, what was school
our
like?
school was great, but their excuse was we can't afford a teacher for you people, so we're going to integrate you.
Okay.
In the meantime, they took our 200-year school and they put the bulldozer to it and wrecked
Was
it.
it only one school that was there?
That was the only school in Africa.
That was the only school, and then
We had our school, we had our church, we had our dance hall. We had about 3 or 4 little stores.
and the teachers, because they mentioned that they were unable to pay. So was the teachers from Africville?
No, it was more or less if you wanted to volunteer to teach school and you had grade 8, you could come out and you could teach.
Okay.
It was.
So they.
We did not get the same courtesy that was offered to the rest of the school system.
Okay.
We got nothing. What we had, they took. They took our school. We used to have a principal. We used to have teachers, but they took them because we couldn't afford them. We were a black community. And it was okay that we be uneducated. Like, they didn't want us to get an education. It's obvious.
Yeah.
I'm illiterate. There's a reason why they kept me in grade 3 my whole entire process in school. There's a reason why they created this auxiliary class for the kids my age in Africville, because they didn't want us to have this day where we could stand up and say this is what happened to us, because they did it intentionally. They kept us ignorant to the fact, illiterate. You know, I got no education. Somebody did that to me. But worse than that, my other siblings and people, my peers, they got none at all.
So one of the question when the Maroons came in and settled in Africville, and at that time they were free, and I'm assuming when they came there were already a lot of intellectual that came at that time that was like either a writer, a lot of intellectual. What happened to the knowledge that have occurred back home in Jamaica, and then when they came here? I'm just kind of wondering, like,
what got transferred?
What got transferred
passed down?
from being free to
Well,
knowledge?
Yeah, we were influenced greatly by the West Indies. We had people that lived in Africa that came up from the West Indies. We held on to a lot of traditions, jump the broom, and black traditions that only black people do. And that's was our community, right? And we like I said, it was a wonderful place to be. It was just so spiritual. The people were so down to earth, so modest. We were poor, but we were clean. I mean, the work we had to do to maintain ourselves in that community is just not fair. But somebody did that for the simple fact of the reason they wanted something that we had, and that was our community. And that's what they took from us. And the reason why we suffered all them hardships, because they created them so they could get what they wanted.
Was there any like doctor, lawyers that was like was there any black lawyers?
No, not back in the day. Not until they came up with Rocky Jones and Gus Burns, and that's like in the 70s and that. No, the only few that we had represented us back in the time was the reverend of the church or the deacons of the church or somebody in authority like that. But as far as, no, we never stood a chance. Okay. They knew what they were doing, and we never stood a chance.
Even though that they migrate in Canada as free, they still, when they got in Canada, they didn't have the same privilege of learning and have any title or status.
Well, that's what I think was part of their intention, to keep us illiterate, so they could actually do what they do to us and get away with it. Because everybody knows what they did was wrong, and nobody's taking responsibility. They're waiting for the water to go under the bridge, so it's all forgotten. It's not going away. This is a very serious problem, and it's a Canadian problem. Until they address what they did in Africville, they can't even begin to talk about reconciliation, because there's no such a word. It don't fit the crime. What they did was a crime. What they did was illegal. They stole something that wasn't theirs. It's up to everybody to blend their voices and tell whoever's in authority. You can't get away with this, not in this day and age. Maybe you could 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but not today. Not today. There's too many rights.
So what do you think is need? What would you want from the government as for reparation, or to repair some of the damages? What do you think would be needed?
Guess what? In the first place, they should compensate us.
Okay, what does compensation look like?
Well, compensation looks like a heck of a lot of money.
Okay. Billions.
Like billions.
Yeah. Ching, ching.
I mean, you just take in the years what they did to us, how they demoted us, how they slandered us, how they used us, how they abused us, how many years lost of community, and the whole 9 yards, and you add it up. Oh yeah, that compensation package would be huge. But also, to go with that, you got to realize that what they took wasn't rightfully theirs. Give it back. That's our land. That's what it's all about. We want our land back. We want to be compensated for every day we were offered. We want the whole 9 yards. We want it all.
So then, if Africvillians were to get compensated and they were to get their land back, what would they do with that land once they have it? Because now it's a park. It's so
it's so obvious, like the nose on your face. There's a big patch of green. Nothing's on it.
Yeah.
We got a housing shortage that goes across Canada.
Yeah, that's true.
We can do a great job in eliminating a lot of that poverty. A lot of that could happen right in Africville. We've got the land, and we've got the resources, and Africville is our future. And yeah, we should be able to develop our own land on our own terms, and yeah, we should be compensated. Yeah, we should be on the same page as everybody else.
So then, I guess maybe this is for Eddy the first.
The
third, sorry.
No problem.
Like, you being the descendants, do you see yourselves using that land and wanting to, I don't know, maybe create that community? Do you see Africvillian descendants?
What's the future of Africville?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Like, the community to come back, it starts there, back with that land ownership. Like, that's one of the most important keys to generational wealth. And not only is it just land, it's prime real estate.
Yeah.
So from there, we can expand however we want. Once we have that leverage of the land to use, well, we can open our own banks, because now we have that money to provide for businesses or support systems within the community to really make it flourish again, right? And it always was. It was in the past. Africville was like the Mecca of Canada for Black people, and it still could be. When you think about Black business, you have we could have a waterfront district down there that's thriving not only through Africvillians but other Black Canadians, everybody that wants to come be a part of what it was, and that's such an amazing place.
And so a question just for you as well is, what does especially for the older generation that's no longer with, but that went through trauma and all that, example your grandfather and your great grandmother and etc., like what do you think the government was the right amount for the newer generation, you, or if you feel like you should, I don't know if my question.
No, I understand what you're saying. No, I do. And to me, it's hard to put a monetary value on so much pain.
Exactly.
I've saw a lot of my ancestors pass away. His brother, my Uncle Victor, my Aunt Evie, plenty of members of the Africville community that had so much to offer are gone. And they spent time fighting and raising their voices to the best of their abilities to no avail. So for me to put a price on it, it's kind of hard. Money can't buy everything. If you really want to make things right, we need to see a direct change to those that are in power.
Yeah.
What does that direct change look like? What do you think it should
looks
look
like more communication. Let's stop dressing things up and let's just be real with one another. Let's be direct, and if you do plan on redeveloping the land, well, come out and say it so that the rest of the people will know. Let's stop hiding the real issues behind these little Band-Aid approaches of an apology or, we're going to rename the park Africville, but we're going to slap the city of Halifax's name under that sign that's bears the name of your community. The indirect message that they send is coming forth a lot stronger than the more simpler one that could really solve the problems. You can say sorry and not mean it. Now show me that you're sorry. There's been too much put on the line. I've seen my 33 years on the planet. I've grew up on that protest encampment. I've seen what happened to him, but I also got to enjoy the lands of Africville as a child. I got to go swimming in the harbor. I got to go fishing. I got to provide food for him at night from the fish that I caught, the periwinkles that I'd pick off. I used to go to the bush. I learned how to ride a bike in Africville. A lot of the experiences that his generation as children got to, so that's kind of rubbed off on me, and now I think that to really justify what was done, it has to be more than monetary. When money's the first thing that should come to them, but it's the last thing that the people of Africville should be worried about, because it has to come. Let's find out the truth. Just like what happened with the indigenous people when they found all those poor children's bodies buried in the ground. Let's go to the site of the dump that he speaks about. Let's do some soil samples. Let's find out what really was going on here through science, through education,
investigation.
Right? Let's figure it out. And then once the general public knows what really did happen and what they are saying is truth, well, then the money's going to come. The money's going to be exponential. But that's also going to enlighten the people that are in power to really say, hey, you know, we owe you guys more than a sorry. You know, let me give you a hug. Like, make it that personal connection, because we're all humans at the end of the day, right? And it's funny because my skin shade, my skin tone, I'm light. I'm very light. I can walk into some places and people don't even know that I have any black in me. So I have a privilege and a curse, because I have no shame in speaking what's right. And that was taught to me by him, because like he always told me growing up, you're going to be the bridge. You're going to be the one that can go in that room with these people and speak from your heart and let them know that what happened wasn't right. I look no different than, not you, but like the people that, and to make them really feel that connection, right? So that's my mission now, is to try and enter the rooms that the doors are closed on my people, and really make that noise and let them know, like, hey, we're not going away, and it's going to be a forever thing.
And I really like the last part that you mentioned. So let's say that you sit on the board, and basically all the wishes that of the future of Africville, like they're starting to build it again the way that you guys would love. Now, have you ever thought about like maybe the backlash of like many of like the darker pigmentation Black people, how they may feel of, again, once again, in an environment that was just that was all about like Black proud and Black identity, and now having another person that is lighter skin, but also that's do have the privilege, like you mentioned, and that also that can, you know, like pass as just white.
That's cool. Yeah.
Making a decision for them, you know, taking their voice away. Like
I don't think that I'm taking their voice away. I think that I've spent enough time within my community that all I'm trying to do is amplify it. It's the same situation as him. Like what he said, it's not about Eddy Carvery. Well, it's not about me. But if I can get into that room and have that conversation that you were unable to, if I can enlighten more people to the truth, the realness of the situation, well, then that's all that matters.
That's it.
We can't close our eyes to the real facts, right? Like that's what's really true, and that's what's holding us back, is that we can't play that game, even from our own side. Like, even if there's a white person outside, like the producer for our podcast, Reese, he's an excellent man. I can't take nothing less away from him than the Black man that I seen down the street. I don't judge nobody by their color. But for when it comes to Africville, I'm not the only Africvillian with this skin tone. So I just want to make that clear too. But what I am is, I've been by his side, and I now feel that same passion, that same identity as an Africvillian, that I need to take and go have those conversations, whether it's with the darker skinned community members or the people that are in power that are still holding our people back. It makes no difference to me, because I know what's inside of me is right and it's just when I speak of this stuff, right? So I have no fear of that. I welcome it, because I feel just the same sadness as he does. I feel that same proudness he does. It's who I am.
So I don't want to say end off, but maybe we could touch a bit more on your podcast, so Africville Forever, and your intentions with that work, and where you see it going, and the work that you foresee.
The name says it all, right? Because when people think about Africville, they try to really just stick it in a place of history, like a time that was long ago, and you're never going to see it again. But for us, it's never been that. For the whole community, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's what it is. It's Africville Forever. And my hopes with the podcast is that we can bring in more of the younger generation who are accomplished people in different fields, not just sports or music or fashion. Let's bring in some intellectuals. Let's go find the children that are studying to be doctors. Let's show the world that this is a community that could still be thriving if the constraints weren't still placed upon them that were placed on their ancestors.
And would Africville be welcoming immigrants?
Of course.
Yeah.
Africville was one of the most welcoming places. White, black, yellow, green, it didn't matter. As long as you carried that open heart and that willingness to just be a human, you weren't going to get turned away in that community. There was never a door locked. You could have come in and felt at home and probably wouldn't have left.
But also the person that would come will have to embrace the African roots that comes, or it's
in a sense. But what happened when they destroyed Africville was like a genocide. So our people now are displaced throughout this whole province and country. So we really lost our way of life. They lost their traditions. They lost a lot of that along the way. Some things have stuck, but there's plenty of it that has been washed away, intentionally or not. And now we don't have those roots. So I think once it would be like the formation of a new Africville, but on the backbones of what the people had to sacrifice.
Yeah.
But another way that I look at it is like you guys just seen that new trailer come out, Wakanda Forever, right? Like that. Yeah. When that's what Africville could have been. And to a lot of that's what they saw it as. Our earliest ancestors said this was gonna be this great place, this free place that we own, that we can now share with our family, our children growing up, so they don't have to worry about ever going through what we had to go through. Right?
And I guess my last question, we're gonna go back to you. You mentioned that you haven't left Africville, so I'm just wondering, where is your home? Because they burned it down multiple times, or just
okay. So I'm still living in Africville. I got a trailer up there. I never left. Now, in these later years, I've had some serious medical issues. I had 13 heart attacks, triple bypass. As a community, as a country, and we're going to really get serious about eliminating racism, about righting the wrongs that our fathers done to us. In that sense alone, Africville comes up in the conversation. It affected everybody that came out of Africville was affected. People that from different places in the country was affected through what they did. I know this much. They did something wrong, and they got to take responsibility for it. And the only way I know how to do that, through compensation. What's a couple $1 billion to them guys? Right. It could build a whole new society for us Africvillians. Sure. There's nothing wrong with replacing and bringing other people in. That's great. That's what we need. We got a housing shortage, and this is the reality of today, not yesterday. Tomorrow, let's look ahead at tomorrow. See Africville for what it can truly be. It can be a Mecca. It is a Mecca. It's an oceanfront property you can't compare it. And all it has to be is developed. With the right people, we can develop our own community. We can take responsibility for ourselves, and everyone can live happily ever after. But the first thing we got to get rid of is this racism and the fact that they could do what they done and get away with it. This is what boggles my mind. How are we going to get rid of racism if we allow it to exist to the extent where it's wiping our whole communities? It's time to give it up, give us back what's rightfully ours, so we all can live in this society together. This is my whole hope. It's never been more positive than right now. My faith is in tomorrow, not in yesterday. I can't change what already happened, but we can make a future where everybody is included, where we all can be proud of being Canadians, and we all can live in Africville if we want to. That should be our prerogative.
That would be nice.
Our choice.
That would be
Thank
nice.
you.
Wait till you guys go see it. You'll feel it. When you see the land, you'll understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
I think we don't have another. I think it's done.
Yeah, I think we're good. So we'll be doing a little tour of Africville, hopefully Saturday. So you guys can stay tuned for the clips on Nero's platform, Consciously Black.
Good plug.
Yeah, and so and I don't know, final words, maybe Eddy the III, final words.
I just want to thank you guys for having my grandfather and myself on your podcast.
It was great.
Yeah.
Right? We could have conversations for hours because there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of possibilities, but this is where it has to start, is with conversation, right? And now you guys know a little bit, so when you return home or your viewers reach out, you can let them know, like, them are passionate people, but they have a reason to be passionate, right? So it's all love, and thank you guys so much for this.
So where
you really appreciate it, and just to get our voices heard is really appreciated.
Yeah.
But what's more concerning is if the people that hear the voices take action. I don't know, get in touch with their mayor, tell them that they don't want to see this going on no more, and they absolutely think that Africville deserves a chance. I mean, it's going to take more than the people of Africville, but together, tomorrow is a promise, and together, we go in it together, we got it made.
Yeah.
It's just that they got to recognize what they did was wrong, and we're not going to tolerate it any longer, so we all can get on the same page and enjoy this thing called life. Thank you for your appreciation.
No problem. Thank you for your time. And people can find you, on...
They can find me on social media platforms, Eddy Carvery III, but also they can go to the Africville Forever website, and through there's links that they can connect with us and ask questions, and we'll do our best to respond.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.